Weed saved Todd McCormick's life. It sent him to federal prison, and it put him in rooms with some of the most influential people in the culture. And eventually, it led him to owning his own seed brand. Now he's turning more than 30 years of experience into a new book about the science behind the plant, and why it hits us so differently as humans. We also get into what modern breeding is doing to the gene pool, and whether autoflowers are expanding our access or destroying our ability to preserve genetics. This is the story, science, and controversy behind one of the most fascinating lives in weed. Today I'm sitting down with someone I consider a friend, the legendary Todd McCormick. Welcome to the Stoned and Successful podcast, where we talk culture, genetics, business, and the people moving the industry forward. From Rob CLTV, let's smoke about it. Now, before we get started, quick shout out to the brands who help support this podcast and also provide some awesome codes for you. Most growers are either running bottled salts or they're guessing with dried amendments, hoping that it works well. Stash nutrients, though, they're built different. Stash Base and Stash Bloom are dry soil amendments, and you top dress your soil, water it in, and let the soil biology do the rest of the work. Then Stash Blend takes it a bit further. It's an instant microbial tea, mix it in with water, drench your soil, and it helps unlock those nutrients even faster without the synthetic salt buildup. No complicated feeding charts, no chasing runoff numbers, just structured nutrition and living soil working together. If you want control without overcomplicating your grow, you need Stash Nutrients in your garden. Go to stashnutrients.com and use discount code THESTASH.
I feel like I'm a constant student. I'm always learning, and cannabis is an amazing teacher if you're into it.
Oh, dude, to say the very least, that's where I've got most of my patience from. Martial arts helped a little bit, but patience is from sour diesel and any haze I've ever grown. That's taught me the goose fraba, relax, breathe, because holy shit, dude. When people say 8 weeks, I'm like, 8 weeks for what? For veg?
Yeah. For veg, no. That's but you know what's funny is
it's a big veg.
That'd be a very big plant. I joke that I learned more about life through growing cannabis than I did through smoking cannabis, because in growing cannabis, I learned how to plan ahead. I learned how to care for something, not too much, but not too little. I learned how to plan out nutrient regimens and when I was going to replicate my clones. And I know it sounds funny, but in a time when I was in my teens, when most of my friends were getting minimum wage jobs and doing the minimum amount of work to get that minimum paycheck, I, on the other hand, was gardening. And if I wanted a new mini bike, all I had to do is kind of figure out how long it would take me to grow a few extra ounces. And then I would be able to buy that mini bike in approximately 12 weeks.
And that's the thing, dude, is once you figure out the entrepreneurship, that's where I learned entrepreneurship. For sure, because I'm like, man, even my fractions, you know what I'm saying? Like, I'd go into school, we're talking weight or fractions. I'm like, oh, I know that shit. Like, how many grams is in an ounce? And I just know immediately. Nobody in my class does.
But I'm like, in eighth grade. Yeah. My science teacher asked that exact question. I put my hand up. He said, what? I said 28, 29 in the bag. He goes, that's wrong. I said, I didn't say shit, but I was thinking it wasn't wrong when I brought you an ounce from my mom's stash, motherfucker. Yeah. I won't say his name now, but he was my neighbor and he did buy weed off my mom. So I was like, I'm right.
You're like, motherfucker, I've always hooked you up proper. It's always a solid 29.
It totally is, actually. I would never come through light at all. Like, I know it sounds weird, but my grandma used to joke that public schools and private schools can be defined by a suffix. What do you think that suffix is, sir?
Help me out.
Grandma said that public schools teach us how to be employees, whereas private schools teach us how to be employers.
Ah, yes. Creators
there's
versus
a world
consumers.
Of difference, Todd.
Yeah, that's I wanted to get my kids into private school desperately, and my kid's mom was against it. She was just, it'll turn them into weird kids. And then I was like, weird? You mean established kids that have self-confidence and know what they're doing in life and aren't fucking slaves to the system? Oh.
But dare I say this, sir, be autodidactic, because autodidactic is self-taught. And the best thing that ever happened to me when I was younger, I was 8 years old and I was home with cancer in my left hip. It was tough. And I had home tutoring because I wasn't able to go to school because I was having a hard time walking. And my tutor came in, he said, what are you reading? I said, I ain't reading nothing. He was like, come on, something must interest you. I said, I got a new mini bike. He says, does it have an owner's manual? I said, yeah. So I ran and I got it. And he started right with the first page. Suzuki, do you know where that comes from? And I said, no. He goes, do you have an encyclopedia? I said, yeah. He goes, go get the one with the map in it. And I was like, okay. So I ran, I got that, brought it out, showed me where Japan is. And I was like, really? And he's like, yeah. He said, are you going to work on it yourself? I said, of course. Cause I was, full of confidence at 8 years old. He said, well, then you're going to have to learn the metric system. I was like, what's that? He goes, that's how the rest of the world measures things. I was like, why? He goes, well, your motorcycle is in metric. So you're going to have to get a second tool set. And I said, wow. He goes, go get a dictionary. And he really took me through like learning how to read and running into a word that I didn't know. And then looking that word up so I understood it and then reading on. And he taught me how to teach myself and not need a teacher when I went to the library. And I have to tell you, that gentleman, to this day, I wish I remembered his name. I didn't have him very long as a home tutor because my hip got worse and I ended up going into the hospital and I wasn't walking for quite a few months. But it was kind of interesting. And he really gave me a gift that I feel few people have. And you can be your best private teachers to your children, in my humble opinion, because that man made an impact on my life that I'll never forget.
100%, man. I think that's the key thing, teaching how to teach yourself. It's like it exceeds the teach a man how to fish. It's like you teach him how to even understand how to understand. That takes you to a whole new level, because that's just application of learning. Anything else you could fit the criteria, whatever sort of thing you want to bring into your life now, once you know how to absorb it properly and bring it into your mind and into your soul and your body. I feel like that's a skill that's more important to be taught than the actual subject that's being taught to you. That's deep mushroom talk.
Absolutely. And for me, as a child that got into cannabis at a young age, everything I wanted to learn was not taught to me in schools. It wasn't available in the school libraries. So all these books that I have around me, I have over 1,000 books in my library. None of it is what you could get your hands on. And one of my fascinations these days is buying old books. Like some of these up here, I have gardening books printed in London from 1721 that talk about hemp being grown. And one of the most interesting elements of that book is it says, basically, so well is it known how to grow hemp that it would be needless to put it in these pages. So think about this. 280 years ago, everybody knew how to drink to drink milk and how to basically grow hemp, because if you didn't know how to do those things, how do you get by in life? So it's really quite incredible.
These are regular things in life.
Oh, it's fantastic. There's a copy of that on my Instagram page where I point it out. And a lot of these books, I have another one from 1872 or 1881. This one is, and it's awkward and it's huge. I'd pull it out and show you, but it's beautiful. It's American Medical Plants, and that's also on my Instagram page too. And what's really incredible about it is it's a very thick book, like hundreds of pages, and it has a description of all these American medical plants and very beautiful illustrations in color of them. And there's only one fold out in the whole book. And don't you know, it's our girlfriend, Cannabis.
She's worth the centerpiece, the fold out. Give her that one. It makes sense. He's sitting there. Oh yeah.
Well, it's all of the plant's pieces and the leaves and the male parts and the female parts. And there's like 3 to 4 pages of description of cannabis Americana, indica, where it came from, sativa, how it was industrial. And it bothers me because I was an editor of Jack Herer's book, The Emperor Wears No Clothes, from 1994 until he passed away in 2010. And then I put out the 12th edition of the book with memorials in it to Jack. And Jack and I used to go to libraries, and we used to go to really old bookstores and such and look for these old books, because he was right. I mean, they were in all of these old books, and you have to seek it out and you have to find it. And it's interesting because I have a bunch of pharmacopoeias, and I have one from literally 1851 that calls it Extractium Cannabis, like it's some Harry Potter shit. And it's phenomenal, Rob, because in it talks about using an alcohol extraction and then a water bath. And it talks about not letting it all get over 150 degrees. And the only reason for that, sir, would be even in 1851, they were chasing terps.
That's crazy, dude. That's that full circle of like our education system has wiped out a lot of what we had in the past. And there's no doubt in my mind with the industrialization of plants as a whole and medicine and how it's become a for-profit industry, and even just the aspect of inebriants, even we'll say with alcohol or with even pills. There's no way they would let us have this information as common knowledge. There's no way. They buried this same thing with meditation and with eating healthy and taking care of yourself and your neighbor, all that shit is looked at as not profitable. I
Dude,
swear.
as you
That's really what it
say,
boils down to.
100% agree with you, Rob, on everything you just said. And what also I would emphasize, sir, is that I'm working on my new book. It's called From Cancer to Cannabis, The Essential Guide to the Endocannabinoid System. And in this book, I'm actually teaching people how essential fatty acids convert into endocannabinoids. And what's very fascinating about in the time I've been learning about this book and learning, researching, and discovering, you're going to love this. Only 25% of medical schools in the United States require doctors to take nutritional classes before they graduate with an MD. So that roughly means that 7 out of 10 doctors don't know jack. Happy 420. Don't know jack anything about
brother.
nutrition. And only 9% of medical schools offer any ECS or endocannabinoid system curriculum. So 9 out of 10 doctors don't know anything about cannabinoids, how they work, or cannabis.
Yeah, that's the thing, man. Is this information isn't new? I find it new all the time because I'll see it at a new science study of some kind, and I'm like, damn, look at this new thing they've been saying that we've been saying for fucking hundreds of years at this point. You know, like at least a solid 60 plus years that we've had people preaching the medicine and how world changing this plant can be. Not just the economic impact that's really what our elites see primarily, but the aspect of like the mental health, the physical health, our spirit. Like there's so much to it with this plant that again, I'm convinced that now the commercial markets, because their focus is high THC and less on the terpenes, even though marketing now is saying terpenes are coming back, which then they'll get hip to thiols and esters. But that's nonetheless, now it seems that we don't have the soul in the plant unless you're growing it at home or you know a guy or gal. There's that medicinal benefit is less and less, and there's getting this cannabis psychosis, and there's all these issues that people are running into, and I think a lot of that's bullshit, but I do think that they're taking away that good medicinal portion of the plant, extracting it for themselves potentially, and making it so we as the common citizen don't understand that this is something we could achieve in our basement in our backyard.
I think I agree. I believe that they're over complicating it and making it difficult for people to understand. Like the goal in my book, in all reality, is to actually teach people about cannabinoids, what decarboxylation is, how it works. I'm really trying to take the mystery out of it because if you smoke it, vape it, eat it, it really boils down to the same thing once it's in your system. And it's the anti-inflammatory effects of THC, THCA, and the other minor cannabinoids that really makes it really impactful for humans. A couple things I'll ask you, sir. Do you know how old your endocannabinoid system is?
Don't educate me, sir.
About
Educate me.
450 million years old. It's in everything that has a spine, including some things that don't have spines. And then I would ask you, how old do you think the cannabis plant is on our planet?
At least that, then, eh?
No, sir. 23 million to 65 million years ago, it showed up. We're not sure. We weren't really there. So we're estimating, but our endocannabinoid system developed literally hundreds of millions of years before nature gave us the cannabis plant, which is
See,
mind
that's
blowing.
insane, man. This is esoteric knowledge that, again, but I'm the kind of guy that I just believe that the elites have all this crazy cool shit. And again, you see a lot of Silicon Valley in the tech world doing these things that someone say are ritualistic, or even like the microdosing is stuff. Like this shit has been around, but they're keeping it from us, man. They're keeping it from us, and they make us look crazy when we go out there and say, dude, you gotta try this. Like my whole brand is cannabis lifestyle. People call me a drug addict in my town sometimes. Like, dude, you're clearly the drug addict who made famous. I'm like, yeah, that's the whole stone is successful, breaking the stigma side is like, hey man, I'm stoned, but that doesn't change who I am. If anything, it helps who I am, in my opinion.
Well, dear sir, what I'm really trying to teach people in this, the first external cannabinoids that you get into your system, guess where they come from?
Yeah.
Your mother's breast milk.
See, and that's goes to show you right there. It's all natural, full circle.
It
And
truly
with
is.
creation.
And it doesn't matter your political party. It doesn't matter your affiliation to information at all. Your body is currently making an anandamide and 2-AG, which are your most predominant endocannabinoids, and they do what's called homeostasis, which simply means balance. And they're really regulating your entire body and system. And what I'm trying to teach people is that, unfortunately, because our diets in Western medicine and Western food, I should say, are like 20 to 25 to 1, omega 6 to omega 3. You and I were talking the other day, and remember I asked you, do you know how many essential fatty acids your body needs? Most people
Didn't even
don't
know.
know. I didn't know, Rob. Like I told you, when I was asked that question back in January of 94, I failed the test. And at the time, I'd been growing 10 years, and I thought I was somewhat smart. And if you'd asked me what NPK was, I would have said, oh, nitrogen, potassium, potash. Don't forget calcium and sulfur, also important. But when Dr. Roberta Hamilton looked at me and said, Todd, do you know how many essential fatty acids your body requires? I went, no. And then she said, 2. And I went, oh my God. I know more about growing plants than I know about growing humans. And I'm a human. I'm screwed. And then she blew my mind more, because omega 6 is in everything and it's inflammatory. And in omega 3 is an anti-inflammatory, and it's not really in much at all. And did you ever have a motorcycle when you were a kid? Did you ever have a dirt bike, 2-stroke engine?
Dirt bike, yeah. Yep.
First thing they teach you, 32 parts gas, 1 part oil. You have to mix the oil and the gas in the tank, or your engine will seize because it doesn't get proper lubrication. And she told me that our bodies, our engine needs it in a 3-to-1 ratio. We developed a 1-to-4 ratio over time. 3-to-1 is considered ideal, depends on your metabolism. But 1-to-4 is definitely where your metabolism falls. That is 4 parts omega 6 to 1 part omega 3. 4 parts inflammatory essential fatty acid, 1 part anti-inflammatory essential fatty acid. Unfortunately, the Western American diet is closer to 20 to 25 to 1. And some items like chicken that's been grain fed with soy and corn can be as high as 60 to 1. No omega 3 at all. Because you're going to love this. Our animals that we eat, they don't make the amino acids. They collect them from plants. And we may joke about vegetarians all we want, but no matter when you eat an animal, the proteins and the essential fatty acids that you get from that animal got there from eating a plant. The animals are just storing the proteins and storing the essential fatty acids. And what happens is basically we eat them, and that benefits us. We can skip over them and get our proteins from things like hemp seed, dehulled hemp seed or hemp nut or hemp hearts have the highest protein, even more digestible protein than soybean, which is incredible. They blows away chicken and beef and all of it for protein per ounce. It's amazing. And then our essential fatty acids are in the hemp seed. And the reason I know all this shit is because I'm an editor of Jack Hera's book, and we have a whole chapter on nutrition in the book. And as soon as I became the editor of the book, I had to learn what our mistakes were and what we were getting wrong and what was happening and what was new. And the endocannabinoid system was only discovered in 1992. And when Jack and I started learning about that in the 90s, we were addicted to it. Dr. Lester Grinspoon made a joke that while cannabis per se is not addictive, learning about it quickly becomes.
And ain't that the truth? Look where I'm at now, dude. Fuck. This is my 11th year teaching people on YouTube, and you get addicted to even learning. As I'm teaching, I'm learning constantly. I mean, I talk with people like yourself, and I find these bits and pieces that I'm like, holy shit, I've already been bro sciencing this for decades, and now I've got some actual factual information to put towards it, and then it gets you down the rabbit hole even deeper, like you've gotten yourself there. You find out how these things all are full circle. It's not just about getting stoned. That's this extra sprinkle on top that you're like, dude, and I get baked. You know what I'm saying? Like for a lot of the stuff,
I'm also making the argument in the book that if our diets were proper, we probably wouldn't crave cannabis because our bodies would make AEA and 2-AG more effectively. And the reason that a lot of people are craving cannabis now and have such an affinity to it is because their bodies are getting too much omega 6, not enough omega 3, and it's dysregulating their endocannabinoid system. And if we were all on a proper diet, eating, put it to you this way, if you had a car And I'm sure you do. And if you brought it to a mechanic and the kid was standing there with a bottle of windshield wiper fluid, and you would like, okay, that's cool. And he poured some in your windshield wiper fluid container, and you thought, okay, we're off to a good start. But then he poured some in your radiator and some in your engine oil and some in your gas tank. And you caught him and you're like, what are you doing? And he's like, what do you mean? They're all fluid. It's just a fluid. What do you mean? And you look at me like, whoa, 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 whoa. Not all fluids are the same. Gas in the gas, oil in the oil, radiator fluid in the radiator, and windshield wiper fluid in the windshield wiper bottle. Stop screwing around. But you know what's problem is we only got one place to put the oil. And we don't know what to put in our bodies. So we're putting windshield wiper fluid where gas goes, and we're putting gas where windshield wiper fluid goes, and we're getting fat, we're getting stupid, we get antidepressant, drugs that are just taking over. Everybody's trying to get high because they don't feel the natural fucking amazement of life. And we're all suffering from inflammation. And the thing is when I got out of prison, I don't have a photo off, handy to show you, but I looked like shit. My face was round, not just my hair, but my whole face. And it was from too much omega-6 and no omega-3 for 5 years of my life, 4.5 years of my life. And it took me a while to get back on my diet. And now, if you look at pictures of me from the 90s or videos from me in the 90s, I look the same. I don't suffer from inflammation because I've been consciously eating omega-3 with my omega-6 and trying to balance that ratio. Because when she told me that, the little 8-year-old in me that had such a love for his RM50 motorcycle and didn't want to screw it up at all was like, oh, wow, that's why everybody's getting sick. They're putting in all gas and no oil. No wonder their engines are overheating and seizing. No wonder they're having problems with inflammation. No wonder their brains literally aren't working right because, 80% of our brains are made up of literally fatty acids. And if there's too much omega-6 and not enough omega-3, you get inflammation or intracranial hemorrhaging. And what happens is you literally can't think, can't sleep well, you get mood swings, you can't deal with things, you can't think straight. This is why people go to psychiatrists. And really what they need to do is just like literally go to the farmer's market and figure out where omega-3 is, which is walnuts, fish, flax oil, hemp seed oil. And it's really hard to like consume less omega-6. But for instance, I'm not telling people to become a vegetarian, but I'm joking that you need to be a selectitarian. And in a lot of ways you already are, because like, do you know what Rocky Mountain oysters are?
Yeah.
You don't eat them though, do you?
No. Honestly, dude, I eat seafood when I'm in Vegas, which is the craziest place to eat it. But
hold up. Okay. All right. Hold on. Let me back it up a little bit. All right. There ain't no oysters in the Rocky Mountains because it's a mountain range. So there ain't no ocean. So I went to a place, a rib house one night in my teens, and my friend joked and said, don't eat the Rocky Mountain oysters. They're bull's balls. And I went, what? And so the waitress comes over and I said to her, what are the Rocky Mountain oysters? She says, oh, chopped diced bull testicle breaded and seasoned. I said, oh, no, not for me.
I clearly misheard you there. I just heard oysters.
I joked. I was like, give me an order for them. So we got them for an appetizer and nobody but him tried them. And we were like, no. And, it's really funny, but this is where we are selectitarians. Like, I don't think if we put peppered horse cock on your plate that you'd be like, oh yeah, I'm an omnivore. Suddenly that shit would go out the window. You'd be eating the broccoli and the baked potatoes with me. Maybe a little bread with some butter on it. You'd be good. But there are things you would pass on like dog and horse and a lot of stuff. So we're all already selectitarians. And this is why I joke that like the problem with cows is that, and please look this up, everybody. Don't take my word for it. I don't trust none of your opinions either. So that's just how it is. But if a cow, a turkey, or a chicken is raised with grains and corn, with basically soy and corn, it has sometimes like beef can have 20-to-1 omega-6 ratios, 20 parts omega-6 to 1 part omega-3. If it was grass-fed 100% its whole life, 1-to-1. Which is what we as humans developed with. And chicken, if that's like, for instance, back in around World War II, it took around a pound of chicken to make a pound of, took 49 pounds of feed to make 1 pound of chicken. So they had contests to try to build a better chicken feed. Now it takes, well, when I read this statistic in 1994, it was down to 1.9 pounds of chicken feed to make 1 pound of chickens, because now chickens don't grow, they swell. And the problem is that we're feeding them corn and soy, and it fills them up with omega-6. And chicken from various restaurants can be as high as 60-1 omega-6 to omega-3. And if that was 100% grass-fed chicken the whole time, 1-1. And this is why we're all having inflammatory issues. And it's not so much because we're eating meat, it's because we're eating meat that was fed improperly. And they don't want to talk about it, and they don't want to change it, because they won't want us to be conscious of it, because then we would be healthier. And that, one of the things that blew my mind about researching this book, and I'm a little stoned before I did this, I kind of toked up, so I'm not sure if I already said this, but only 25% of medical schools require nutritional training to get an MD. And only 9% of medical schools are offering endocannabinoid classes to get an MD. So basically 7 out of 10 doctors don't know anything about nutrition or what I'm talking about EFAs. And 9 out of 10 doctors don't know absolutely anything they're talking about cannabis or cannabinoids.
And that's the problem. And then these are the people who are in the government's ear or in, the business's ears. They not only do they not give a shit, but they don't even know that they should give a shit because they weren't educated on this. So everything that they have learned for years, this is almost counterintuitive. This is the opposite of what they've been taught in a sense, because they look at the use of a plant like this with more of a negative light. Only recently with the Schedule 3 conversation have people been changing it. And that's only because it's profitable. That's because they've found a way to make money on it. I swear to God that when you look at the businesses that have put money into this, who have backed these things, they're all ones that are the biggest conglomerates that in the medical cannabis space or in the pharmaceutical space. They're just here to make money, not to help people. And they're probably going to do something just like they did with opiates. You go and take opium, natural opium, and you process it and have somebody now on Oxycontin, or now fentanyl. We've gone so far when people are doing fentanyl. That's how much it's changed, where it started as something from a poppy plant and it worked its way all the way to this crazy synthesized, addictive, heavily controlled drug that has become, so bad for the culture here in America as a whole. They're putting in fun drugs with fentanyl, which is nuts. But it brings people to the point now where I don't trust the plant unless I grow it myself, or I know the grower.
I've felt that way for a long time because I've always been organic because I'm a bit of a hippie at heart, and I don't trust pesticides. I don't trust other people. In the 90s, Avid and a whole bunch of shit was circulating. People were thinking, what's the problem? I was thinking, not for me, man.
Eagle 20 all over your shit. Like, no, thank you. No, thank you. Like, I'm trying to, and you already went through cancer. So now being conscious of the things you're putting in your body is like, hey, you've already dealt with this shit. You got the scars, so now why would you put things that can give you cancer? Like they tell you, they give you the warning, but they're still going to give it to you. The forever chemicals, now that the government FDA's approved, they're like, hey, sounds good. Send it out. No problem. But we're to the day and age now where it's like growing your own isn't as achievable for a lot of people because it's the you own nothing and be happy society. Everyone's going to be in an apartment or they're going to be in a condo or something that they can't even grow, and that's the craziest part. How do you obtain it?
I don't know how well this is going to go over, but I was only 13 when I started growing. It was a marvelous thing. It was January of 1984. I went to my friend's house. He was older. He was 19, and he was a carpenter. And he built this white wood box and it was in the living room where the TV would normally go. And I'm not telling everybody to go put a grow tent in their living room, but he kind of did. And when he opened the doors, it was like the color scene from The Wizard of Oz, man. It was the first time I saw cannabis plants in person and growing and live, and I could touch them and go, oh my God. And he had fluorescent lights on pulleys with a little wood bench. And he had, there was a picture in a Mel Frank Ed Rosenthal grow book where it was like a little wood bench with the fluorescent light at an angle and the little plants growing at a different angle. And he exactly copied it. I ended up trading him a $20 bag for that grow book. And I went right home and I cleaned out my closet and I found a fluorescent light in the basement. It was my grandma's. She also had some old laundry lines with pulleys. I grabbed those. She had pots that were ceramic, kind of nice. And she had a watering can. And she even had soil. And the only thing she didn't have was nutrients. And I suddenly realized why all her houseplants were dying. And it was because she wasn't pHing her water and she wasn't giving them any food. So I couldn't wait to tell her, but I couldn't tell her. And I started growing upstairs in my closet, and I was growing for a year, almost a year before she caught me. And she was really blown away that the plants could grow under fluorescent lights. And she let me bring them down to the basement. She let me keep my garden. And she taught me how to clone, actually using Hormex #8. No bullshit. A paper towel, putting it on a little plate, keeping it moist, putting it in the window, and by her kitchen sink. It was friggin' awesome.
Dude, it's similar come up for me, man. I started when I was 14. My mom has always been a grower and a stoner. Her mom, my grandma Rainbow, she's, old school hippie, part of the Rainbow Children cult even back in the day in California. Like she was deep in the game, we'll say. But learning the grow when I was really, really young made it so this was just a normal thing. Like being around this, they tried to call it other shit all the time. My mom would smoke and say it was cloves. This is cloves, honey. And I was like, oh, so I didn't say anything during Dare. I wouldn't have snitched anyways. I was hip to the shit. But the love of the plant, like you said, when you when you see those plants and that fuzzy feeling, it's like, like, did you ever think that 13-year-old kid was going to own a seed company that's preserving some of the most legendary genetics in history, dude? Like, you
I
ever
would have
step
saved
back and
my
think, like,
seeds a
holy
lot
shit?
younger. If I had the seeds, because I used to, so my mom was a pothead hippie, and I started selling her weed when I was 12. And it's the reality. And I would always take the seeds out the bags and make the bags look better because and it's just what it was. And I saved them. I used to have Pringles cans full of seeds, and I would kill for that. But what's funny? My life turned around when I was 13. I was literally like, I was a pre-existing condition, so my family was on welfare. We weren't wealthy at all. I know welfare cheese all too well. Like when grandma would make butter noodles, I knew it was because we couldn't afford red sauce. Like it was pretty lean growing up where I was. And Pawtucket, Rhode Island is not known for its wealth. And 13 years after I started growing, I was living in a 5-story Bel Air mansion with a staff of 5 growing 4,000 marijuana plants when I got busted. And I know that sounds kind of crazy, but cannabis, it can turn your life around.
Dude, 100%. I mean, look how far it's taken you. I mean, from, bouncing back from cancer to finding the love of the plant to going to freaking prison, getting out, and then being in the most legendary, crazy circles. Every time we talk, dude, you bring up some absolute icon in a casual passing sentence. Yeah, I was just hanging out with my buddy Bill Maher, or, who we're talking, this
Bill
guy,
used
that
to
guy. I'm like,
visit me
what
in
the
prison,
fuck?
by the way. Bill used to actually drive all the way down to Terminal Island to come see me.
See,
He's a really
that's
nice
a real
person.
friend, man. Like that's the thing is the circle of influence that you've been around are people who are like really big in pop culture, but they seem just like real dudes. You know what I'm
You
saying?
know,
Like majority at least.
I agree with you. It's weird because like I was never the person that wanted to move to LA and be famous. I've really kind of resisted any fame that I've found because I hated it. Like when I was living in Bel Air, it sounds weird, but like I drove a minivan. I drove a light blue Plymouth minivan that had a fucking dent on it because I felt so self-conscious living in the mansion that I was like, I don't want people to judge me on bullshit like cars and crap. So no jewelry, no necklaces, never anything like that. Just if you like me, cool. If you don't like me, cool. But it isn't going to be because of the shit I got. And it's interesting because meeting, like when I moved to Bel Air, that's where I met Woody Harrelson. That's where I met Hugh Hefner. That's where I met Larry Flint and Bill Maher and all these incredible people. And I'm not saying that like, oh, I'm so cool. I'm saying that because like I met my stoner friends. Like Woody Harrelson bailed me out of prison. He literally put up $500,000 cash to get me out of prison when I got busted in 1997. And his personal assistant picked me up from jail. Like they're amazing people. And like, and Bill Maher, I mean, used to visit me in prison. Like, I remember one Thanksgiving in 2003, I was in a holdover jail in San Bernardino, and it was Thanksgiving, and we were hoping that I would be home, but I didn't get the year off because they wouldn't let me graduate RDAP. They hated me, and that's okay. But I did an extra year in prison because I would not program. They actually have a stamp, inmate will not program. I found that through doing my Freedom of Information Act request, and I was honestly proud to have that stamp. inmate will not program. Bet your ass I won't program, motherfuckers. They wanted me to sign a form saying when I get out, I would never use medical cannabis again. I was like, y'all crazy. And they're like, you're going to do an extra year in prison. I was like, great. I'll go read a book. And they just didn't know how to deal with me. I know that sounds crazy. Like, even when the prosecutors and I were in with my lawyers, and they made it really clear to me that, look, either you're going to come in and debrief or we're going to recommend you go to prison. I looked at them and I went, what time do I show up for prison? And they looked at me like, oh, you are a special kind of crazy. And I did. I showed up on time, January 3rd, 2000, 2:15 p.m. Walked in stoned.
So arrest me, sir. Go for it.
I was very polite. I walked up to the federal building. I pressed the little button and, said, hi, Todd McCormick. I said the federal agent's name. Can't remember it now. And it was hilarious because he came walking through all cocky and like everybody got quiet. And when he got out to the little controlled area, behind the bulletproof glass, he said, let's step outside into the corridor. I said, sure. So we step outside. It was me, him, and my girlfriend. He said, hey, thanks to you, I won the cooler bet. I said, what was the cooler bet? So, well, a lot of people were betting you weren't going to show up today. I said, man, fuck them cowards. And he goes, I knew you would say that. He goes, I'm from Rhode Island. I'm from Cranston. I was like, no way. He goes, yeah. He said, I called my mom and told her I had to pick you up today, and she bitched me out for 20 minutes. He said, you got a lot of support back at home. I said, are you serious? He goes, yeah, actually. And he was so nice to me. And I know this sounds strange, but like, I used to trip at Grateful Dead concerts. I've gone to so many I can't count. And I remember being on acid and frying one night at one of them, and Jerry sang, sometimes you get shown the light in the strangest of places if you look at it right. And that shit resonated with me, and I think it's friggin' true. And like that's a really odd place to find support when you're turning yourself into the federal marshal, and he's like, good luck. But that's exactly what happened to me. And I know it sounds weird, but like meeting Hugh Hefner it was incredible because as a kid, I grew up reading Playboy, of course, for the articles, of course. But
Yes, we just said great writing,
phenomenal centerfold information.
I
if you
remember
read
all
all
those
like
authors.
descriptions, but it turns out I was
Forgot the
also
authors'
good
names.
friends with Keith Stroop, who started Normal back in 1970, and it was Hugh Hefner and the Playboy Foundation that initially gave the money to Keith to start what we now know as the National Organization for the Reform of Marijuana Laws. And I mean, that's pretty significant. And the night that I met Hef, I was with Bill Maher, and I was already busted and on the news. And Hef didn't just shake my hand; he grabbed my forearm and he started talking to me about cannabis and how much he loved it and how he'd been using it since he didn't tell me this in front of Bill. He told me it later when we were sitting in his bedroom smoking a joint in front of his safe, because I could literally draw you a map to the safe in his bedroom because I sat next to it with him many times. And this sounds crazy, but he started eating pot cookies in the 50s when he met the Beats. And he was a secret cannabis user all through the 60s, all through his life. And he discovered his endocannabinoid system. And this is why I think he lived to be a very fertile 90-year-old plus. I think he was 92 or 93 when he passed away in 2017. I should know. I think he was 92. I think he was born in 25. April 9th, 25, I believe my friend was born. And but it was pretty incredible. And like, I know it sounds weird, but like to learn that was phenomenal. And like, what bonded us was cannabis. And it was really hilarious, Rob. And I don't tell so when we met, he invited me to come to dinner, and he flew Keith Stroop out from DC just to come and have dinner together with me and him. And I missed dinner because I was driving down from the mountains, but I got there for dessert, and then we went out in the back to smoke. And it was hilarious because he asked me if I could get him some weed, and I looked at him and I was like, how am I going to get a hold of you? He just call and ask for Hef. Call and ask for me. And I said, really? Just call the Playboy Mansion and ask for Hef? He looks at me and goes, I said, that'll work? He looks at me and goes, it'll work for you. And I was like, oh my God. And I got to tell you, it was really kind of a thrill to call it the first time and be like, hey, Todd for Hef. And they're like, hold please. And 2 seconds later, hey, what's up? I was like, do you want me to come home? He's like, yes. And it's funny, but I know it sounds weird, but you know what it really taught me, Rob, is that we're all very similar. Like meeting a lot of these people that we celebrate that have been super successful. I would say that Hef was super successful in his life, and a closet cannabis. He didn't drink. He had alcohol, but he didn't drink. One night after a party, he caught me picking up trash. And when I say he caught me, he walked up while I was picking up trash, and he was like, what are you doing? I said, what are you supposed to do at your friend's house after a party? He laughed. He goes, do you want a cookie? And I said, a cookie? He goes, and I was like, yeah. And we went up the stairs, we went across the top, and we came down into the pantry, and he had a little thing that was like HMH only because they were pot cookies. And he gave me a cookie, and I swear to shit, I wanted to save it, but it was too good, and I ate it on the way home. but I know it sounds weird, but it's like finding the humanity in us, and I think cannabis connects us all, and that's a beautiful thing to learn.
Dude, I always say that that's our common ground for so many people I've met. As I met them via I smelt bud, or they smelled bud on me, and they're like, you smoke, or some sort of shirt or style of something, or when they said, hey, do you smoke? And I'm like, smoke what? If you don't just
what
smoke
is always
cigarettes,
the word for us that don't smoke tobacco. Do you smoke
it's
what?
the universal.
Only what I grow and only what I roll.
Yeah, sure. And it's funny, man. Just the other day, I was getting groceries, and a guy walks up to me. Shout out to Adam. He's a viewer of my show, and he's like, "Hey, do you have a YouTube account that has educational content for plants?" And like, I just knew he was trying to not say, "Hey, do you got a weed channel?" You know, and he was like, "This the way that we had this thing where like we loosened up, like, oh, sweet." I was like, "Hell yeah, man!" Like just the immediate like that commonality of knowing that you're a grower or you're a smoker, and it's like, dude, it's so bizarre how that starts it, and then you find these other similarities. That's our first common ground bond point. You know, it's handing the joint to somebody, and then all of a sudden it's like, you watching the fights this weekend? They're like, oh yeah, dude, I love UFC. You're like, they're my best friend, bro. Let's hang out. You know, it's just like with Pigeons and Chris, we started out just as a business, right? All stoners. But then we found these other layers. The first layer is weed. Second layer was business. And then all of a sudden, like, we have so many common things, but it's like, without the plan, I would have never met these guys. I would have never met some of my best friends, my brothers, you know?
Right.
And that's the beautiful part that's why I'm so obsessed with it, dude. It's like, I will confidently say obsessed because there's medicinal, there's community, there's culture, there's economic, there's getting baked with your buddies. There's so many layers to the plant, you know, growing it, like cultivation. I learned how to grow my own fruits and vegetables from growing weed.
Yeah.
I did not know how to before until I realized I'm like, wait. This is the
This all
same
applies.
type of, this whole works, you know? It's like, it blew my mind. It was like a full circle moment from a childhood to now. And I'm like, holy shit, I've known how to be self-sufficient my whole life. So, you know, it's like, it's wild.
My grandma was born in 1911, and when we got HBO, it was like a little antenna on our roof, and I was really excited. And she laughed at me, and I said, why? She goes, because when I was a little girl, we got something in the house, and I was really excited. And I said, what was that? She goes, the electricity. I said, whoa, how did you keep your food cold? She goes, we didn't. I was like, oh my God. I was like, how do you preserve it? She goes, salt. And I was like, Grandma, she was like, that's why we always garden. And that's why she taught me how to garden. And she thought it was a fundamental element of humans. You had to know.
Used to be. And now it's a trend. Now it's a TikTok trend to be a homesteader. Right. And it's like, to just be self-sufficient, it's a niche. That's nuts to me, dude. And the craziest part about that is it's now become unobtainable for so many people, like I said, where you're living in apartments, you're living in small communities, you know, or you have to get permission to grow certain things, or collecting rainwater is banned in areas. It's gotten to the point of being self-sufficient is a problem. You even look down to genetics, dude. Like we were talking autoflowers. You know, for my buddies, my viewers who are autoflower people, they cannot be self-sufficient. How are you going to be able to continue to grow if, let's say, the internet shuts down and you don't have a ton of autoflower? You're done once you harvest. It's over with. It's 100%.
Done. I've been getting a lot of crap thrown at me because I've been a critic of them for a very long time. And my biggest problems with them are, you know, we covet things like OG Kush, Sour Diesel, Trainwreck. You know, I could go on and on through the cultivars that are clone-only cultivars that have only been kept alive because of their ability to mother and reproduce through clones without flowering. And you can't do that with autos. So, and what bothers me is when people don't realize the genetic makeup is half hemp and then half whatever they say it is. And the bigger problem is that it's not always half what they say it is. So they're putting names on things like OG Kush Autoflower, and it's not at all It doesn't resemble OG Kush whatsoever. And it's an insult to the term, the name, the whatever you want to call OG Kush, to see it just bastardized like that. And it drives me crazy. And the reason I think that they're doing it is to kind of take away our self-sufficiency. Because, for instance, if you get a pack of authentic genetics, regular seeds, you can then select through those seeds. You can pick your favorite female. You can keep her under 18 hours of life. And you can literally, through asexual propagation, keep her for the rest of your life and make clones of clones of clones and grow her for forever. And if she doesn't get any viruses or viroids, she's going to be exactly as she was as you found her from the first time you flowered her to the last, as long as she doesn't get sick. You can't do that with autos. You are beholden to buy more seeds every single season. And you can't control the growth. You can't control the yield. You can't mother them. You can't clone them. It takes away all of the beauty and all the powers. And, I'm a huge fan of Mel Frank. Not only was I a little geek, learning about growing in his book, but then in 1996, I was standing in Positronics in Amsterdam, and he was there for the High Times Cannabis Cup. And I had the good fortune of being with the owner, Bernard, and I'd been living and growing there for a year. So the plants in the show and grow were mostly mine and Old Ed's. So we had a problem where we lost a majority of what we called the green team. And that just meant that Old Ed and I could start putting our clones throughout Positronics. So when the 1996 Cannabis Cup came, the show and grows were literally everything flowering was stuff that Ed and I were working on. And Mel Frank was standing in front of one of our show and grows complimenting Bernard Brunning, who owned Positronics. And he said, it's never looked greener. This is incredible. And he said, yeah, I went from 24 employees to 2, and they've been taking care of all of them. And he pointed to me and Ed, and Mel Frank looked at Ed and said, oh, wow, you do a great job. And he looked at me and goes, he does it all. I just point. And it was hilarious because I was like, shut up. And that's how I met Mel Frank. And we became best friends. I mean, I absolutely love the guy. I adore Mel Frank. I'm the only person in his life he ever let sell his seeds. I absolutely adore him. He's literally one of my best friends in the whole world. And we've been best friends now for 30 years, really. And from 96 till present. And it's amazing how I feel like we can inspire each other and teach each other. And it's one of the things, Rob, why I'm very supportive of what you're doing, because, the people that you're touching now, just like Mel Frank touched me through a book that I traded for a bag of pot and forever changed my life. We don't know the impact we make. And, when people talk about success, they think Bentleys, they think Rolexes, they think bullshit, but really it's having a positive impact in other people's lives. And it's the human experience that we can amplify. And I know that sounds weird, but being a kid who grew up slinging weed and other substances, money was never my goal. It was my tool. And if there's anything that anyone's watching this and thinking, how can I be successful? It's rearrange your priorities. Prioritize the things that matter and don't prioritize the things that don't. Because literally, it doesn't matter how much money you have if you have no creative mind to use it. And if you have a creative mind, there's no budget that you can't realize if you can't figure out how to put it together. I mean, this sounds really baked, but I got asked to co-produce parties at the Playboy Mansion in 2007, 2008, 2009 in order to raise money for the Marijuana Policy Project. And it was an honor because of the history I had with Hef and the Playboy Mansion and the Playboy Foundation being such a supporter of NORML going back to 1970. So I gladly took the job, and it was incredible. I had Blues Traveler play the first year, or I want to say it wasn't me. I was part of a team. And but Joe Rogan emceed for me that year. DJ Pooh, who made the movie Friday, who's one of my besties. He's not only one of my besties, he bailed me out of jail in 2006 when I got busted for growing the herb again. Picked me up on a Friday night at midnight, man. It was amazing. And I love the guy. Pooh is amazing. Working on Grand Theft Auto 6 right now. He's phenomenal. But he DJ'd for me. And dude, it was incredible. Bill Maher came down and accepted an award the first year. Second year, I had Perry Farrell play for me. And then we had a normal DJ. And the third year, I didn't pick the music, but they did give me a Lifetime Achievement Award or a Lifetime Dedication Award. And my mom came. So my mom watched me get a Lifetime Dedication and Cannabis Activism Award at the Playboy Mansion. How weird's that? Like, talk about one of those things when you're a kid, you're like, I'm not even imagining this. Like, it doesn't even come into
Dude, that's so crazy. Again, man, like that 13-year-old kid that first sees those plants at your buddy's house to just be like, this is what this is going to take me. I'm stepping into this door, this gateway. And that's,
Never
dude,
would
it's
I've
like the
experienced.
peaks and valleys, a lot of peaks and valleys in this space. And like, it still is what it is. But like the way you've rode that wave, brother, you've done it well.
Oh, dude. I went to my New Year's party, my 1999 to 2000. I spent at the Playboy Mansion, and I have a photo of Hef and I. Yeah, and I didn't have the heart to tell him that I was going to prison. I regret that now because it was before his stroke and everything. But on Monday, January 3rd, I had to go to prison, and I didn't want to ruin his night. As cold as it's true as that was, I didn't want to be a wet blanket. And I should have told him, but I didn't. And he wrote to me when I was in prison, which is pretty amazing. He was a very sweet man. I mean, I've been really fortunate because I think I've really met the human side of a lot of people. And after doing 3 of those parties, I wanted to produce something bigger because I wanted to really emphasize the economic demographic that cannabis is and that couldn't be ignored. So I rented the Los Angeles Convention Center in 2009, and I hosted the THC Expo, and I had 40 to 50,000 people show up to my first day, which was June 13th. It was a Saturday. And I've rocked it, dude. I had a fucking line going down the stairs, out the door, and around the corner. It was fucking amazing. And, you know, what I was trying to prove is that we are a demographic that can't be ignored. NPR did a piece on it. And it was really incredible because, you know, I know it sounds weird, but the reason I'm saying this is because that's why you can't have money as your goal. You got to have your dreams as your goals, because once you have the vision and the idea, you can find ways to fund it. Like for me, I sold almost 300 booths, and you know, like that was not an easy feat in itself, but bringing the community together was my goal. At the time, it was the first large indoor cannabis expo ever. I've been so involved with the Seattle Hemp Fest for so many years that in 2011, when they turned 20, Vivian McPeak, who's the founder, and we put together a book called Protestival, a 20-year retrospective of Seattle Hemp Fest, which I highly recommend. It's full color. It has all of our posters through 20 years. It was us trying to change the world. And I wasn't there when it first started, but I was there through a lot of it. And Vivian's a very good person, and I always was inspired by his efforts. And, you know, but I know it sounds crazy, but like I kind of wanted to do it in my own way. And I pulled it off. And this is why I say that we need visionaries, we need dreamers, we need people that aren't focused on Bentleys and Rolexes and bullshit, but on dreams and facilitating them and manifesting those dreams into reality so that we can all have, I think, a better time at life.
Dude, so well said, man. I always say money's the byproduct. You know, it's like if you do good, and especially in this culture, if you do good by the plant, by the people, and you have some business acumen, you have to understand how to make profit with stuff. But the money comes. You know, like I know a lot of people who are willing to sell their soul for a quick buck, or they do shady shit or affiliate with the wrong people or wrong brands just to leverage to get to a certain point. And it's like, dude, I'd rather have this slow road and feel happy and be comfortable in my own skin and proud to, like, my legacy. I want people to look back and be like, Rob's always kept it real. He's always thought about the community and the culture first and the plant. And it's always been about just really, I don't know, man, putting my everything into it. I don't like being the center of attention. And when I started my brand, I was not even on the show for the first like 10 episodes. I wrote it and had somebody else be the face. Cause I just want to I want to make, again, the change in the world aspect, dude. That's how I want everybody to smoke dank and have fire quality bud. The people who've been, you know, affected by harder drugs to be able to say, dude, you can still get buzzed and get baked, but here's all these benefits, these medical benefits. It's like eating a really good protein bar. Like it tastes actually pretty damn good. And actually there's all these benefits that are packed into it you didn't realize. And it's like, I think more and more people, if they're exposed to it in the right light, that's where they're able to get it. But it's the aspect that if you're baked now, it hinders your performance. And the biggest thing is if you work a traditional job, blue collar especially, you're getting drug tested. So it's like the one drug that stays forever. You can have a bender over the weekend and do a bunch of blow and take pills and drink all weekend and clean out your system on Sunday. Why is this the one thing that somehow could be tested forever, dude? It's like,
I will tell you why.
I sat in juvie for 190 days because I couldn't clean out when I was a kid.
Water-based molecules compared to oil-based molecules. So let me break this down in a different way for you. And I would give you this for an analogy. Your body is literally like a bouncer at the front door of a club on Sunset Boulevard in Hollywood. And it can tell the difference between the pedestrians and the tourists that are coming through and when the celebrities pop up. And when the celebrities pop up, they say, come on in. We have a table for you, bars on us. Let us know if you'd like something to eat. Please hang out. Let me get a space for you. And what our body is doing to THC is it's seeing it as the celebrity and saying, come over here, come on in. We're going to store you for up to 30 days plus. We're going to utilize you when we need you. And all that other stuff that's going by, we're going to piss it out. We're going to sneeze it out. It's gone. And it's really kind of incredible because now when you learn more about THC and cannabinoids and how our body makes them endogenously, it really makes you think that they have this all backwards. And I'm making the argument from Cancer to Cannabis that we need to legalize cannabis because of science and our own biology. Because prohibition, let me break this down for the people watching and really why I think this whole book is so important and what I'm trying to teach people is we only discovered amino acids in the 20s. We didn't know what they were. They didn't become essential amino acids till the 60s. And we still just learning about it. We didn't know we had CB1 and CB2 receptors till 1989. And then when we found them, the scientists went, oh shit, I wonder why we have them. I wonder if we're making any of these compounds endogenously. And then we found AEA, which is anandamide, and 2AG. And when they named anandamide, ananda and amide are two different words. Ananda is Sanskrit, means bliss. Amide means internal. They literally named anandamide internal bliss. And what bothers me even more is that we only discovered in around 2012 that omega-6 and omega-3 convert into AEA and 2AG are endocannabinoids. So only now, in the past 15 so years, 16 years, have we literally learned the physical biology of how our body uses its nutrition to create similar compounds from cannabis. Because please keep in mind, an endocannabinoid is a cannabinoid, and a cannabis plant makes phytocannabinoids. PHYTO means from the plant. ENDO means from our internal body. At the same time, they're both cannabinoids. They both swim into the CB1 and CB2 receptors and modulate your entire being. The whole thing is based on homeostasis, which literally translates into balance. And this is where I feel like we're falling off. And I'm making the argument that we got to legalize based on science and biology. All of these old laws that literally came around before we even understood our nutrition, essential fatty acids, how important the hemp seeds were. One thing I'll point out about hemp seeds is really interestingly enough, because I'm a fucking weed geek, I went up to the Sacramento Law Library and I read literally all of the transcripts from all of the witnesses in 1936 and 1937 in front of the Ways and Means Committee, because I'm a geek. And one of the most interesting elements of it was the birdseed people had only a couple weeks earlier found out this marijuana thing was actually hemp cannabis. And they went to Congress and said, you can't take away hemp seed. When we take it out of a plant of a bird's nutrition, they don't molt. They don't regrow their feathers. And they didn't understand essential fatty acids at the time, or that they were coming from the hemp seed, or that all the other plant seeds had too much omega-6 and not enough omega-3, if any at all, because most of the seeds don't have any omega-3. They didn't know why it worked, but they knew it worked. Like you were saying, they were learning it through experience, and they found out later why it worked. Well, that was the canary in the coal mine. They used to put canaries in the coal mine because they would die first before the humans when they would get too toxic. Well, fast forward, we find out in the 60s, oh, wow, we have a couple essential fatty acids. If we don't intake them, our body doesn't get them and it can't create them. We need them. They're essential. And only then later did we find out they convert into endocannabinoids, because we didn't even know what the fuck that was until the 90s. And it bothers me now that we're still walking around with our head up our, because we're not looking at the reality of it and adopting to the new information. And this is what my whole book is about. It's like, yo, we got to wake up or we're all going to be sick. For a long freaking time, we're all going to be sick. And it's important that we legalize cannabis, because it's the only plant on the planet that has these cannabinoids that then complement our endocannabinoid system. And Dr. Lester Grinspoon, who I adored, he was one of my dear old friends. He was a Harvard professor. And you'll laugh, but I met him through, I saw him speaking, but I was one of the people in the crowd. And when we happened to be on the same floor of a hotel during a normal conference, and I was walking to my room and he was walking to the elevator, and my room was like next to the elevator. And when I looked at him, he said, "Hi, Todd." And I said, "Hi, doctor." And I looked at him and he went, I said, and he followed me into my room. We didn't say anything other than, and once he walked into that hotel room, dude, he was a whole different person. He was Lester. He was full of life. He was like, "Oh my God, you got some good stuff." Like, dude, and we start like literally like, he was probably 30 years older than me at the time, 20 years older than me, 30 years older than me at the time. But dude, we became best friends. And it was over the joint, and it was over the weed, and over the herb. And he was so fascinated. "You grow this yourself?" He couldn't believe it. And like, dude, it was amazing. And like, it was all because of that connection, that human connection to like smoke a joint together and make a best friend. And, him and I were best friends through my life after that. Like, even when I got busted in Ohio and I had an international prescription from a Dutch physician, and the judge said, "Can you get an American doctor to validate your Dutch prescription?" I said, "Yeah." Dr. Lester Grinspoon wrote a letter for me. Dr. John Morgan wrote a letter for me. He wrote a book called Marijuana Myths, Marijuana Facts. He also wrote and Dr. Todd McCormick, who wrote the Marijuana Compendium, really, the medical marijuana papers. They all wrote letters for me because they were all my old friends. Dr. Todd McCormick, dude, back in 1994, I was working with San Diego Normal, and I put together like a little event at La Jolla University where he was going to come speak about marijuana. I called him up and asked if he'd come. He said yes. And I went, picked him up at the airport, San Diego airport, and I rolled 2 joints. And I put him in the ashtray, and I closed the ashtray, and he gets in my car, and Todd was a big guy. And I said to him, "Do you smoke?" And he smiles. He goes, "Why, you got some?" And he opened the ashtray and he saw the 2 joints, and he goes, "Is one for me?" I said, "Yeah." He goes, "We're off to a good start." And he lit the joint. We rolled out of the airport and we were best friends forever, man. I love that man. He passed away of cancer, but he's in my first documentary, The Union, the Business Behind, not our documentary, the Union, the Business Behind Getting High. Joe Rogan's in that too. Dr. Lester Grinspoon's in that. I'm in that a lot. My friends from Canada came down. They wanted to interview me for it, and they didn't realize I was the editor of Jack's book at the time, and they started asking me questions, and they liked how I answered them. So they said, "Could we ask you everybody's questions?" I was like, "Sure." And then they just juxtaposed me against other people answering questions, because I was right about all the things. So they'd go ask professors and lawyers and shit, and they'd come back with the same shit I said. So it was like, this shit's gold. And it was funny because when I sent my friends to go interview Dr. Lester Grinspoon, he thought that I was sending over some friends with a little video camcorder and shit. They show up with real cameras and lighting and microphones and the whole thing. And he calls me on Skype. He goes, "Todd, they must have spent an hour lighting me." I was like, "Yeah, we're going to try to make this a good movie." And then it came out and he fucking loved it. And then years later, it did so well for us that we were urged to do The Culture High, or the second documentary. And we started that in 2010. That took us over $1 million in 4 years to make. And in 2012, I was receiving the Cannabis Culture Award alongside Richard Branson, of all people. One of those things I would never expect, but it happened. You can go on YouTube and type in Todd McCormick, Richard Branson, and watch us do a video, talk about legalizing weed, because that's what we're both into. And when I was with him, I asked him, I said, "Hey, any chance you've seen The Union?" And he said, "Yeah, I thought it was brilliant." And I was like, oh, that's good. I was like, would you consider being in our next documentary? He said, maybe. I said, well, maybe's better than no. And he laughed at me. He goes, yes, this is much better than no. And then I gave him some OG Kush, and then we started laughing and talking about when he played chess with Woody. And he was just like, I don't know, we kind of became buddies. And we connected on the herb. And it's funny because he ended up saying yes. And he liked it so much that on October 1st, 2014, he launched the Culture High for us on virgin.com. And I got to say, it's pretty awesome because you can't get a billionaire to do anything he doesn't want to do.
Yeah, no shit. Not these days, especially. It's vice
No,
versa.
dude, it was awesome. And you know what? It got us international press, and Netflix liked it, and they put it in 70 countries, and they translated it into 15 languages, and they have what they call a language matrix that goes out, and they have these cool maps of all the different languages that are spoken in the different countries, so they can serve the movies to all these different countries. So our Culture High literally was in 70 countries for 5 years.
Holy shit, man. See, and that's the impact, dude. That's changing the world. That's where, again, it all comes full circle, man. It's like doing all of these things, riding the waves of the peaks and valleys, getting through the trials and tribulations, and then all of the success you've gotten from it. It's been able to get you to the point where you can get around these people that can magnify your voice and your message to push this to the people, dude. And like, that's really what it boils down to. It's like when you're an authentic person that has a good vibe and is doing right by the people, it may take some time to do it, but the impact is so much larger. You know what I'm saying? It's just, it's got such a, it reverberates more with the real people, the ones who've been waiting for somebody to say, dude, I've been saying this all along. Now there's somebody with a professional image with this video that's, I can share with a science community or with anybody who would doubt me and be like, holy shit, this is educational and this is changing my mind, my perception, you know, and that's what we need more of, man. Less of the propaganda bullshit that's making people think, you know, oh, it's ruining the nation and everyone's becoming zombies and they're throwing up and getting cannabis psychosis. And it's not that, man. It really boils down to the whole world right now, especially in America. We have this mental health crisis that's like just getting worse and worse and worse. And a lot of it is the food. And that's where then the food with the media, with the crazy shit we see online and all the wild stuff with the algorithm pushes to you. And then there is one thing that we can help that kind of buffers that. And that's weed, man. It really is. As crazy as it sounds, like there's so many movies that hint that where they're like, ah, they couldn't get the stoner. In this movie, Cabin in the Woods, they had this pheromone that was getting everybody, but the stoner for some reason. They're like, yeah, damn stoner. It doesn't affect them for some reason. And it's like, it's funny. You know, it's like,
You know, it's funny. There was
I
an
just
old
feel
movie in the 80s called Trading Places with Eddie Murphy and Dan Aykroyd, where these two rich barons decide to basically swap a bum for a rich kid, and they turn their lives around. And there's a scene in it where Dan Aykroyd tries to set up Eddie Murphy by putting a bunch of drugs in his desk, and Eddie catches him and he's throwing away the drugs, but there was a joint, and he smiles and he saves the joint and throws all the other shit away. And then it goes to the next scene where he's in the bathroom smoking the joint. And suddenly the two rich robber barons come in to discuss, because it was all over a $1 bet. And they come in and they look under the stall to make sure nobody was in there. And he jumped up on the toilet and he threw the joint in his mouth and he's like this. And he hears them tell what really went down between him and Dan. And turns the whole movie around. And it's funny because the whole paradigm shift is because cannabis, even though he was only smoking it in the toilet where he wasn't supposed to be, was what caused him to learn the truth.
fun fact, that is usually how it seems to work, man. You think different. It's like you get past the bullshit. You kind of, the stress and the artificial pressure that's the world puts on us all of a sudden is alleviated. And you're like, damn, I can think a little clearer. You know, and some people seemingly don't have that effect. And I swear, again, that's the endocannabinoid system is where, you know, for me, Headbanger, which is sour diesel crossed with Biker Kush from Karma Genetics, that hits my G spot. I smoke that, dude. It's just, and it's the only strain I've kept for 8 years now. I've had this, you know? And so it's like, I think people need to find what works for them. Weed is not, I hear that from like my mom's generation of people, like the people who were like younger in the 90s where they had brickweed and they didn't have strains. People who were from the 70s had unique genetics, but the 90s had a lot of just Mexican brickweed, especially here in Michigan.
Can I
it's like weed
can I
is
say
weed.
no though? Can I say no? Because look, NL 5 by Hayes. I'm not the biggest fan of Neville, but and if you go to toddpmccormick.com, you can read the horrible story of Neville and the Holland Seed Bank on my website and judge for yourself. But he made things that I liked. The F1 NL5 by Hayes, Super Silver Hayes. There was some great things from Serious Seeds. We got AK-47. We got Cali Mist. Even Jack Herer was initially debuted in 1994. It was originally a Northern Lights Haze combination, but it didn't sell well for Sensi, and they ended up basically breeding it with skunk one, which is the solution to everything. And that is what created, if you look at their 1996 catalog, they had what they called Jack Flash, and that did really well. So they just dropped the Flash and called it Jack Herer. So Jack Herer changed that year, but there were some really good varieties. OG Kush came out of the 90s. Trainwreck came out of the 90s. Ultraviolet which was a variety by Trichrome Technologies. It was like a purple Afghan, was kind of way before the purple Urkels and the granddaddy purples. There was Ultraviolet. Maybe because I was around and growing, I look at it a little different. I was going to the Cannabis Cups in 94, 95, 96. I was living in Amsterdam and growing all the genetics in 96. So I kind of had a different experience with it. And at Positronics, we sold clones. We were like a mini mall of marijuana. And Bernard Brunning was a legend. I mean, he still is. And but Positronics in the 90s would have blown your mind. Everything from a vegetarian cantina to show and grows to mother rooms to hash rooms just dedicated to making hashish, to bulk grow equipment. And we sold clones, we sold grow equipment. The name started as Positive Electronics because we couldn't get grow lights, so he made his own. So Positronics literally made their own ballasts and lights and put it all together. They had one system with two ballasts and one timer. You could plug it into the wall. It had two 600-watt lamps that came off it. He called it the Kilo Champion. And it was great. And people would come in and we would teach them how to grow cannabis. And if they were so green that they didn't know how to grow plants, we would bring them into little video rooms with little video TVs in it. And we'd play a video for them. They'd have to sit there for a half an hour learning what, NPK was and what nature cycles were and what, when spring comes and when summer blooms. And, because a lot of people don't understand these things, and even people that buy my seeds now, when I talk to them about, what summer solstice and, one of the things a lot of people don't know is that if you go into summer solstice with the full moon, you get a couple extra weeks of growth. If you go into summer solstice under a new moon when the sky is really dark, the plants get the message that the sky is changing quicker and you go into flowering quicker. And a lot of people just who they don't grow and they don't observe the night sky and they ain't paying attention to that shit. When I tell them that, they're like, really? The only time, and this bothers me about autos, the only time cannabis will not automatically flower if you put it outside is between May 15th and June 20th. That's it. If you put cannabis plants outside between pretty much June 20th all the way around till April 1st, April 2nd, April 30th, even the first couple weeks in May can be questionable because the sky is literally so short that cannabis will start to flower. And if you put your seeds out too early, like May 1st or April 1st, they'll start to flower before they start to grow, and it will impede their ability to get big. It will actually screw up their whole metabolism and they'll be confused because they want to grow, and then flower. And you're making them grow a little bit, flower a little bit, grow a little bit, flower. And they're like, what is going on? This person's an idiot.
Yeah, I think. Well, that's again where now, we were kind of talking about this yesterday when we talked on the phone. The people who are pushing the autoflowers are unique in their own way are the ones who are selling them. Honestly, those are the ones who are the loudest or benefiting financially from it. But dude, when I was in Germany, there's so many great growers out there too. As you got to say, for being so novice, and they're very open to say, hey, we did a little, but now we don't have years and years of experience. They are some amazing growers. It's crazy. But
Let me
they
say
need
something.
to not grow autos.
They're fibbing. Because you want to know something? Sensi Seeds have been slinging seeds to Germany so long that Ben Dronkers almost got in trouble for it. Ben Dronkers created Sensi Seeds' whole business plan since the early 90s going towards Europe and not America. His catalog was available in like 5 languages in the 90s. Germany, France, German, French, Dutch, English, and Spanish, I think were the ones. When I'm trying to think off the top of my head which ones he had, because I lived there. I mean, I was Ben Dronkers and Sensi Seeds were the ones that gave me the Cannabis Culture Award with Richard Branson. He owns the Hash Marijuana Museum, and he opened that one in Barcelona. So I'm very familiar with their. I was around. Is I don't know another way
I
to
think it's
put
just
it.
young. Like, there's definitely always the underground culture, but it's the younger generation of growers that like they kind of waited until it was more legal. They maybe had a couple plants, but these people who are a little newer will say they're very familiar with yourself, with myself, with the YouTube people will say even. But growing the autos, man, it's because the space. When they have 3 plants to flower in their mind, they're thinking, well, I'm not going to have any room to clone anyways. What's the point?
But you know what, though? That's where it becomes most important, because if you can only fit 3 plants, you want to give them pre-growth. You want them to get big. When they were flying around and counting our plants in California, the way my friends in Northern California got around it, they pre-grew their plants from literally January through May 15th inside under lights, let these little 3-inch clones get 10 feet tall, still in veg, and then moved them outside on May 15th, repotted them into sometimes 500-gallon smart pots full of really nice amended soil, little 10-foot plant in this big pot, and then they'd start building trellises around it, because these 10-foot plants would go to 30 feet, 20, 30 feet, and they go from 5 to 10 pounds. And this is why I tell people that pre-grow is most important, that you could control, because you could give me a cannabis plant and I could take a clone and get 10 grams. I can take that same clone and get 5 to 10 pounds if I grow it differently. And this is where autos really fail on us, because they're cheating themselves out of a better harvest, because you have no control of pre-grow with autos.
Well, and honestly, I've smoked 4 in my life, 5 that I would smoke again. And I think potentially 3 of those were photos and they said they were autos. And I've smoked over 100. I have somehow endured smoking over 100 autoflower strains, dude.
I can
And
taste it.
I do
Like CBD
like in an
varieties had that
envelope.
cherry taste. I hated it. And
It's
autos
like
do too.
this
They have a
after
weird,
flavor.
yeah, I don't
And
like it.
people try to say I'm crazy, dude. And it's like, no, I have a palate that has smoked for a long time. I'm a 3rd-generation stoner. It's just like, it's different, man. It's like, I'm the sommelier for a lot of people who watch my channel. They're like, would this be good? Would this be good? Would this be good? And I'm like, yes, try this, try this. Don't try this. Try this, try this. I can say confidently that you might find one auto that lacks that flavor based on having higher esters, is what I really think it boils down to. Is if that sweet flavor masks that root. It's like making a mixed drink with a shitty, vodka, very cheap, nasty, harsh vodka, but you have the right mixer and it kind of blends. And you're like, you know what? I just tasted cranberry. That's all I'm really tasting. And I'm getting a decent, feel it, That's what I think a good auto is. And it still is on a low tier. And people get mad at me when I say it. They say I'm just an auto hater. I don't hate autos, femmes, anything. I hate bad weed, period.
I
I hate
don't,
bad weed.
a couple things though. I don't like lumping autos with femmes, although oftentimes autos are feminized. Um, but there's a place for feminization, although I don't favor it, because all feminized plants or seeds are made from chemically induced hermaphrodites, and they are less environmentally stable and they are more prone to hermaphrodite themselves. And also, it represents the bottlenecked end of a genetic, because unfortunately, these European seed companies that select plants are selecting for yield and speed. I don't care about that. I want quality. I'll wait an extra week. I'll wait a few extra days for something that didn't yield as well. Like OG Kush, for instance, if we judged that plant on how it yielded and how it grew, we would have kicked her out of the garden a long time ago. But she smoked great, so we put up with that. And it bugs me with these autoflower people, because literally, like, and feminized is what I was saying, but they're picking the short, fat sister, and I want the high quality sister. And I would rather go through a pack of regular seeds and select the female that I like best, rather than be stuck with whatever female they hand me.
That's a great analogy. Sorry to the little short, thick girls, but it's the one with no personalities either. Because then when you get to the end, not only were they not appealing, There's nothing there. And I'm like, wow, I'm talking to a wall.
And I
Because
hate to say
man,
this,
I'm
but
telling
you
you,
know,
like,
so the two things people ask me about, Rob, all the time with seeds is what's your heaviest yielding and quickest flowering? And that's why I say the short fat girls, because they want these big buds that harvest in no time at all. They never, they are more now. But when I first started, the question was never what's the highest quality smoke. It was always what's your best yielder? What's the fastest? And it was like, guys, that's not. But
I look at it like
no,
street corner hookers, cheap street, like lot lizards. Like it gets the job done, cool, but you're never gonna have the same one again. Maybe if she still works the same corner, you might get lucky, but it's not good quality. I mean, I haven't personally experienced it, but the cliche aspect
it's
is that it's
hilarious.
just so rough. You get her done. It just gets the job done, and I think that's where when people argue with me, there's a place for autos. Okay, cool, place for autos if you're okay with mids. And mids is not boof. That's the thing. Mids is not shitweed. People, they get mad when I say mids. Mids used to be good when we had brickweed because in Michigan, again, somehow we had a bunch of Mexican swag, like packed with seeds. We literally would take an ice pick and sometimes have to
Pry them
like
apart.
chisel.
I
Yeah, just
know.
to open up so we could smoke. You know
I
exactly
know.
what it is,
I
dude. But
lived in
thankfully,
San
you avoided a
Diego.
lot of
I
that.
in 1992, I moved to San Diego, which I didn't know California at the time, and I moved to Chula Vista, which is like 10 minutes from Tijuana, and I made friends, and I saw exactly what you're talking about, actually, and I saw some good stuff come out of there too, and I will never diss the genetics coming out of Mexico. The problem is that it's the handling. They're growing commercial weed. They are literally drying it in a hurry. They're putting it in trash compactors. That's how they get those cool little bricks. And they're trying to maximize, and I get that. And the first time I rolled up on my friends, I was 12 years old, and I had a motorcycle. I had a TS 100 Suzuki, and I had a 20 bag from my mom, and I rolled a couple joints. I split the bag of half. I took the small half with me and my two joints and my rolling papers because could be an emergency. And when I get there, I was following some kids on the trail. They were my friends. They were from the neighborhood, and they stopped. And I was like, "What are y'all doing?" And they're like, "We're gonna smoke some marijuana." "What do you know about marijuana, McCormick?" And he had a bag of brown weed, and I never saw a brown weed in my life. And I was like, "Why is it brown?" And he looks at me and goes, "It comes brown." I said, "Well, it don't grow brown." And he looks at me and goes, "The fuck do you know?" And I went back to my motorcycle. I've opened my seat, pull out my bag of weed, pull out my joint, light it, go over. I pass it to him and I show him my bigger bag of weed that was green and frosty. And because it was my mom's friends, they grew it in a greenhouse in Vermont. And he was like, he had never seen green. He'd never seen anything like this before. And then he hits it and they all started coughing, all my friends. And my tall friend was like, "That's what it's supposed to feel like." And it was really funny. And my friend, John was his name. He's looking at the bag of weed. He said, "Would you sell me this?" I said, "Yeah." And he goes, "How much?" I said, "How much will you give me?" Because I'm figuring my friends are paying way more than my mom's friends. So he says, "If I gave you $20, would you feel like I ripped you off?" I said, "No, no, we'd be good." So he like pulled out $20. He gave, dude, I was the only delinquent that was 12 with the motorcycle. All my friends were like 16, 17, 18. They had to like drop out of school and have jobs before they got motorcycles. I was totally the outlier. And then my other friend, the tall one, was like, "Can I get one too?" And I had that second bag at home. And I was like, "Yes." And he lived literally 4 houses from my grandma's house. So I was like, dude, and I made $40 in 1982. It was September of 1982. And I was blown away. And I mean, $40 back then was like more than
Oh,
$100.
you
So
were as a
like,
12-year-old too, dude? Like, fuck.
dude, and I went, dude, gas was 86 cents a gallon. I went and bought rolling papers. I treated my friends to like some hamburgers, fries, and Coca-Colas. That wasn't even $4, and back then it was like, fries were 50 cents. A burger was 99 cents or something. It was like super cheap. And I went back to my mom and I was like, "Can I get another bag?" And she was like, "Todd, you got to make these last." And I was like, "Could I just buy one?" And she was like, "Oh, fuck." And I was like, and she said yes. So I was like, "Can I pick?" Because some of them looked fluffier. So I went and picked through the bags and took a bag. And she was like, "Don't be selling no joints at school." And I was like, "Never." And I never did. And you want to know what's funny? Through my teens, I was like the neighborhood weed dealer my whole till I left. I never sold joints. When somebody would ask me for a joint, I realized they couldn't even afford a dime bag, and I felt bad for them, and I'd give them a joint. And even though I'm not religious, I felt like, you know what? It's got to be kind of good karma if somebody later on will be like smoking a joint and thinking good thoughts of you.
Dude, 100%, man. And plus, again, you could have taken their whole journey, that gateway that you may have opened up for them, where they've got this medical journey or this recreational journey, whatever the hell they want to look at it, cultivation. They would have never gotten that smoking that brown ditchweed that your buddy had. They would have been like, yeah, I remember pot.
They just had to smoke more of it. There was still THC in there, but it wasn't quite as good. Didn't have the terpenes. It didn't have that oh my god to it. It was funny because then I started growing when I was 13, and I would trade quarter ounces of my weed for ounces of my friend's weed that he bought that were like, at the time it was 90 an ounce for the good green bud. And I would trade him a quarter ounce for an ounce. Like my whole little business model when I was 12 was I would buy an ounce for 90. I'd split it into 4 quarters. I would sell them for $40 each. I would get 160. I'd make 70 profit, and I'd do it again and again and again. So I was literally 12 making about 200 a week.
Dude, I was doing comparable. My ounces were 200, and I was getting them from my mom's dude, my mom's plug, who was my grandma's old friend after she moved to Israel. So I was able, like, it's such a similar story, but the dollar amount was so much higher. But it was the first green bud we had, and then it was just chronic. I learned eventually it was Durban poison, but it was the first not. It was fluffy. It was sticky. It had a smell that was just like, whoa! You couldn't hide it at all. And the fact that I didn't have to chisel it open, that's when that was my gateway where I was like, holy shit, dude, what is this? We're no longer just getting stoned. I'm in a new world. And just the smell of it and to look at it, the euphoria of seeing it glimmer in the sunlight. I was like, this is different. The brickweed was just a shine because it was all smashed trichomes and they were ruined essentially with leaves and stems packed in there. This was a whole different specimen. And that's where it's like, I've just been obsessed with genetics and the uniqueness of all of it since, man. It's amazing. And you probably did that for somebody giving them a joint. They were
That's
sitting there like,
interesting.
holy shit, dude.
There are notes in George Washington's notes where he would plant cannabis along the paths because they had a bioluminescence at night in the moonlight. All those crystals would light up and the plants would look amazing. You can look that up. I'm not making it up.
See, and that's the thing, man. It's like this history has been there. The information has been there, dude. And it's just now getting out there and coming to light. And I think that's where, again, man, your book, where can people get your book? I'm going to need a copy once it comes out.
Hopefully Amazon. Amazon was the first to ever sell my first book, How to Grow Medical Marijuana. It's kind of funny because when I met Jeff Bezos at the 10th anniversary of Amazon, because Bill Maher was the MC at his concert, and he let me and my girlfriend go with him to Seattle on a private jet. It was kind of cool. And yeah, when Bill was busy signing autographs after the show, um, Jeff Bezos came up to me and said, "Hey, are you his manager?" I said, "No." He said, "Are you his agent?" I said, "No." He goes, "What are you?" I said, "I'm his friend." And he laughed. He goes, "Oh, that's totally cool." He goes, "What do you do?" And I said, "I'm an author." And he goes, "Do we sell your book?" I said, You not only do you the first to sell my book, I want to say thank you." And he said, "What's the title?" I said, "How to Grow Medical Marijuana." And this woman who was the COO at the time, she looks over and leans in. She goes, "My chef grows the best shit." And Jeff looks over and goes, "It's true." And I said, "No way, you two?" And they said, "Yeah." And the three of us did like a little group hug. And then she took a picture of me and Jeff standing there smiling at each other like two kids who just met. And it was friggin' hilarious. And, but when you stop and think about it, Jeff Bezos moves to Seattle, Washington to start a bookstore out of his garage. If that isn't a stoned thought, I don't know what is. And it made a lot of sense, dude. He had Bob Dylan and oh, come on, not Sarah Jones, was it? She might have opened for him, but I'm sorry, I'm forgetting. I think it was Sarah Jones and the Handsome Band. She opened for Bob Dylan, and Bill Maher emceed it. It was friggin' incredible, and it was a lot of fun. I mean, in all reality, like you meet the strangest people and you find out you have connections with them, and then it all makes sense a little bit. And I know it sounds weird, but like I think a lot of people are very, very successful. I mean, look at when Joe Rogan had Elon Musk on, and the image of Elon Musk smoking a joint with Joe is, to say that's gone viral would be a friggin' understatement.
Yeah. I mean, that's become iconic at this point. It's like it's one of those
Incredibly.
images like Michael Jordan, the jumping, like this is his thing. Is a
Dude, I'll tell you something. I got to meet Kareem Abdul-Jabbar one night at the Playboy Mansion in the 90s, and I was at a buffet, and I was getting food, and I looked over, and there was a suit pocket next to my head, and I was like, whoa. And I looked up, and it was Kareem, and he looked down at me, and he said hi. Super nice, super polite. And I said hi, and I'm a huge Bruce Lee fan. I started martial arts when I was 12. I'm a huge Bruce Lee fan. So, when they were fighting and the whole, kick him in the chest, and these were memories I'll never forget. So like a puppy, I followed him back to a table because it was open seating. And I stood there for a minute and I was like, may I sit with you? Because it was just him and two really beautiful women. And he was like, of course. And I sat down and I said to him, we share the same doctor. He said, we do? I said, yeah, you got your medical marijuana card from Dr. Eidelman, same person I got mine from. He said, how could you possibly know that? And I said, because Jack Herer, where you went and got it from, couldn't shut up about it when I saw him a few hours later. I'm the editor of his book, The Emperor Wears No Clothes. He looks at me for a minute. He goes, Todd McCormick? Because I said my name was Todd. And I said, yeah. He goes, you live in Bel Air? I said, I do. And he was like, reached over the table, because I said to him, I'm a big fan of yours earlier. He reached over the table, dude, his hand was like this long, I swear to God. And like, I felt like a little kid. I shook the little
just grabbed his
part of
finger.
it. Like, yeah, a little, like, it was hilarious. And he said to me, I live on Stone Canyon too. And I was like, no way. And he starts telling me a story about the night I got busted. And I was just like, holy shit. And it was really
From the
incredible
outside
because
perspective and shit, like a neighbor watching.
that's
That's
exactly it, dude. I
crazy.
didn't realize. I mean, he was literally down the street from me, and I was just like, holy shit. And he had such a touching story. Because we lived on a dead end or a no outlet, because we're optimists in LA. So no dead ends, just no outlets. And so we were on our no outlet, and you usually don't see cops in Bel Air. And he said to me that he was like finished with dinner and he went to smoke a joint. And he goes, I'm a little paranoid, So I looked out the window. I saw a cop go by, and I thought, that's odd. He goes, and I looked out again. I saw another cop go by, and then another cop go by. And he goes, at that point, I put away my joint. He goes, and I turned on the TV. He goes, because he heard helicopters. And then he turned on the news, and there was live news from Bel Air, marijuana busted up the street from him on Stone Canyon. And he was like, I felt so bad for you. I saw all those plants and everything. And he told me this really endearing story. It was really quite nice. I mean, he's a cool neighbor. And I asked him, I said, did you ever, smoke when you played? And he looks at me and goes, did you ever see me play? I said, of course.
Yeah.
Well, then you saw me play high. He goes, because I couldn't afford to get a headache when I was on court. That was my office. He goes, so I had to smoke before every game. And when you stop and think of this, the NBA's all-time scoring champion smoking weed before he went and played every single time. And how long was he the all-time scoring champion for? Like 30 years or some crazy shit? And nicest man in the world. But he had to hide his cannabis use for a long time. It kind of came out in the 90s when he got busted, and he literally came out and said, I'm a medical cannabis user. And so I'm not blowing the cover of a legend. He's his own legend. And it's funny because, I'm, because I get to go to Bill Maher's show, I got to meet a lot of people. And Mark Cuban is somebody I know by a first name basis. And I read a thing about him kind of being down on cannabis. And when he walked in, last time I saw him, he said, hi, Todd, because he's known me now, honestly, probably 10 plus years from doing Bill's show. And when he walked in, I said, hey, man, I saw that you were kind of hard on cannabis users. He said, yeah. I said, would you have traded Kareem? He said, come on. And I was like, right. I was like, medical cannabis user his whole life. He goes, really? And I told him the story, and I said to him, ask him. Like, don't ask him in public, but if you ask him privately, he'll tell you. He goes, I'm going to see him at the All-Star game. I said, then tell him. I said, then ask him. Because I told him the part I told you. He used to be my neighbor, and we have a dinner one night at the Playboy Mansion. And Mark's looking at me and was like, what? Like, where were you in the 90s? And what were you doing there? But he was really nice about it. And you know what? I think that it can make a big difference because people like him are in a huge position and they shouldn't be condemning the use of cannabis by their athletes when their athletes are using that instead of things like opiates for pain and swelling and the endurance that they have to deal with. I mean, people don't think of cannabis as a performance enhancing substance. I hate calling it a drug. When your body makes anandamide, it's called a neurotransmitter. When the plant makes THC, they call it a drug. And I think that's crap. And I think that part of what I'm making the argument with in this book is that it should be considered more like a nutraceutical because it acts like a pharmaceutical, but you get it through your nutrients. You can eat cannabis. It is beneficial to your body. And you digest it, you turn it into 11-hydroxy metabolite. And by the way, that's 2 to 5 times more psychoactive than THC. And you don't get 11-hydroxy into your system unless you eat it. It has to go through the liver. It has to go through what science calls the one-pass effect. So eating cannabis can be very effective, as Huff knows, or knew. But smoking it is really quick acting. But what I'm doing now, Rob, is I'm actually taking my hemp seed oil and I dissolve my hash into it because I learned. So back in 1997, I had a Marinol bottle and I was thinking, synthetic molecules suspended in sesame oil, encapsulated in gelatin. And I had just used an AB epoxy in the house that day. And I was thinking, man, I wonder if Mother Nature gave me the AB epoxy in cannabis. So I went and grabbed some hemp seed oil, poured it in a little frying pan, started to heat it up, walked over to my dry sieves, scooped up some trichromes, dumped them into the oil, and they started to melt because they're wax. And what happens to wax when a candle gets warm? It melts and turns into a liquid. So all those trichromes melted right into the hemp seed oil, and I put some on some bread because it decarboxylated under the heat, and I got way too high. So then I started experimenting with a mason jar and putting some dry sieve in it and filling it with hemp seed oil and agitating it with the cap on and putting it in the refrigerator. And after about 10 to 20 days, the lipids in the hemp seed oil dissolve the trichromes and they trap all of the cannabinoids and terpenes in the oil. So you truly get the full spectrum of cannabis because for everybody watching, if cannabis was approaching you with all of her healing powers, in one hand is the hemp seed with the fully complex digestible protein and the hemp seed oil with a perfect balance of essential fatty acids. And in her other hand is a trichrome with her cannabinoids and terpenes. And if you put them together, only then will you get the full spectrum of what cannabis really has to offer you when it comes to healing and helping you live a better life.
I think that's the key thing, man, is educating yourself on the health benefits of it beyond just getting baked. And people don't understand that, just the stone side, that is literally the top surface of the funnel. That's the most surfacey surface.
And it's not that I don't love Friday nights getting baked with my friends, because I do, but the beauty of what I just described to people is it's not decarboxylated, and that like my recipe right now is about 5 grams of BHO or rosin dissolved into the 10 ounces of hemp seed oil. And if it's about 80% THC, that gives you roughly 400 milligrams of THCA per ounce of hemp seed oil. And what's beautiful about that is I can take a couple ounces of hemp seed oil a day, which is literally like 1,600 milligrams of THCA, and not get high. And I know that's like, why wouldn't you want to get high? Well, if you start consuming 3 or 4 or 500 milligrams of THC that's decarboxylated, you're not going to do anything for the rest of the day. You're going to go find a nice place to sleep and crash and wake up in a couple days feeling really hungry. And the thing is that if you have people that have seizures or have medical problems or have depression, you can give them this combination cannabinoid, terpene, and hemp seed oil. They get the benefits of a balance of omega-6 and omega-3 enriched with phytocannabinoids and terpenes from the plant. And you have an incredible anti-inflammatory oil that can really help people on a fundamental level where it comes to healing your cells and healing your body and being the building blocks of cellular development. And you can't understate the amount of impact an anti-inflammatory has against all the inflammation that we're suffering from. Because I think a lot of the mood swings and the antidepressants and such are caused because we have way too much omega-6. It is swelling our brain. You have a synapses and a receptor, and there's a little electrical impulse that goes between the synapses and the receptor. When you have a fucking idea, literally, it's a little electrical impulse that has to swim through fatty acids to get to the receptor. And if your brain's inflamed, or if you're not able to have the right ratio of fluids in your brain, that kid's throwing windshield wiper in your engine oil and in your gas tank, and you're not understanding why your car's not running. Stop putting the windshield wiper fluid in your gas tank and trying to start the car. Because what's happening is we're putting too much omega-6. Our brains are swelling up. That little synapses can't get the message to the receptor. And suddenly everything about our life is more difficult.
Dude, well said, man. I'm excited to read the book, dude. I am a ton. If you got the PDF, even I'll read that one initially to start off. I got a flight coming up going to Vegas next month, so be something to read.
Sir. I'm going
Hell
to
yeah,
distribute
man.
it as widely as possible, and I'm going to try to sell it for the least amount of money that Amazon will let me sell it for, because I really hope it helps people. We'll see. If people are listening to this, you like to watch Joe Rogan. I was on Joe Rogan back podcast number 44 when we were doing it from his house, because he's been a great friend and a real supporter. He was in the union. He was in the Culture High. He emceed my first Playboy party. He wrote an article for me called Welcome to the Revolution in my first magazine that I published out of prison. He's friggin' awesome. And hopefully, we'll get this book out to a lot of people, because I really think it can help a lot of people, because a lot of people don't really understand the whole meat vegetarian thing. And I think they'd look at it entirely different if they saw that meat, like, look, if you go hunting like Rogan, your animals are going to be grass fed and naturally fed, and they're going to have a 1-to-1 ratio. If they're grain fed beef from McDonald's, you're screwed. If they're KFC chicken, you're screwed. And the reason I moved towards vegetarianism, I'm not a full vegetarian. I do eat big eye tuna, but the reason I moved away from eating beef and chicken at restaurants and supermarkets is because back in 1994, there was only one ranch in all of North America that was advertising 100% grass-fed beef. And that meant that all of the restaurants around me and all of the supermarkets around me was feeding me poison. And it caused me to just rethink food. Just like we rethink nutrients for our plants, we got to rethink nutrients for our body. Just like we pH our water, we hypothetically should be considering our own pH, so to speak. I mean, we don't. I mean, there is a sale of alkaline water for sure, but the point is we really should consider our nutrients, because you're your only person. Like if I won the lottery and you wanted a Ferrari, I'd buy you a Ferrari. And if you track and crash that Ferrari, I could buy you another one. But if you crash this body, you can have the Beatles' George Harrison money, and you're dead.
100%, man. Health is wealth. It's a major overlooked thing, I feel like. And that's, again, it's not profitable for the elites. It's not worthy to push. But I think if everybody gets on that train and thinks differently, that'll be huge. And I hope all the people listening and tuning in and watching understand how a lot of us are already incorporating a lot of this into our life. But then our diets of the food is not just the weed, that aspect. The stoners, I feel like we're already one step ahead. But the stoners who get the crazy munchies and get McDonald's and Little Debbie's and do all that shit, that's what the media has told us that we want as stoner munchies. Don't do that.
Well, we you know what, the sugar and the dopamine and the serotonin, what happens is it's really a reward system that we're feeding, and we get stoned and it tastes good. And as much as I like things that taste good, you got to get past eating food just based on taste. You have to look at food for its nutrients and what it's doing for your body. Again, it's like pouring windshield wiper fluid into your gas tank and expecting that car to run right. All fluids are not the same. Yeah.
Well, brother, I appreciate it, man. It's been a great time chatting with you, dude. I definitely am going to come down to LA to come and do it in person, because we could go for hours and smoke so much.
You're welcome to. They just let me be a judge in the California State Fair and the California Leaf Bowl, which is a magazine. And it was great. I mean, to have the California State Fair incorporating cannabis experience into it's huge. I mean, they've rated me in California four, maybe three, four, five times. I had to stop and count. 95, 97, 2006, 2009, and 2012. So yeah, a lot. And now they're giving me free weed and asking me my opinion on it. So I think that's a huge evolution.
It's all come full circle, man. It's all come full circle. Well, brother, I appreciate it, man. We'll do this again soon. And yeah, thanks guys for watching. Until
Thanks
next
for having
time.
me on.